Boom. Okay, here we go. Ooh. Podcast of the Lotus. Wait, no. What's it called?
You want to do an intro?
Yeah, we need to know what it's called. Adam's gone.
Podcast of the bass drum beaters.
Yeah, that's it. Featuring Paul Kenjamin and Wonnie John. No. Right, it's called
Chat Flams
Chat Flam. Right, instead of Flam Chats.
instead of Flat Flams.
Oh, okay. Not inverted. Not inverted. Inverted. Flat chams.
Flam chats. I like flam chats.
Flam
What
chats.
about the things? What about the things Biant used to say? You know, percussion discussion, free on prescription.
Percussion discussion what?
Free on prescription.
You broke up again, sorry.
That's what Biant used to say, innit? You should have a percussion discussion because it's free on prescription.
Oh, free on prescription, yeah.
Or what about, you remember that guy we met in New York, that Lenny guy?
Oh, yeah.
About hiermetrics and stichometrics.
Oh yeah. that was called Hypermetrics and Sticking.
Yeah, and that guy was like, I've got 1,000 videos on YouTube. And we were like, yeah, whatever, mate. And hotel room, we looked and he did.
Man, now that YouTube's really hit off, because that was 10 years ago, I wonder if he still has a presence. I stopped seeing his videos about 8 years ago.
Yeah. Him and what about Jeff Indike? Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'm re-acquainting myself with Jeff Indike's videos a couple of months ago.
Why don't we call ourselves the Sons of Indike?
What about the Sons of Indike?
Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to Singularity Strokes Podcast. Someone built the infrastructure before we discussed the name. Yeah. What's got 6 thumbs and is really disorganized? Yeah. Thanks for your help. 4 thumbs. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I did some show notes and I haven't looked at them, and you guys didn't write anything on them, so.
Well, I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know what we were doing today.
Well, yeah. So
we're going to talk about my mushroom trip.
Well, the first thing I was going to say, my girlfriend was saying, are we going to keep it PG or not? So apparently not.
I personally think it should be a bit irreverent. I think it should be fuck the Singularity Strokes. It should be Sons of Indike, like, because you're in a hyperspace, aren't you? And like what the things we're talking about, how things outside of drumming factor into drumming, and things like what Jack might talk about today. I mean, all this stuff factors into your drumming because it's part of your life, and your life becomes your music.
You got
how can it not all be connected?
Yeah.
You know? That's the whole point, isn't it? We're discussing all these things, like what do you call it? Like just sort of outside of the box ideas, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I just say, sorry, whenever Adam's speaking and Jack speaks at the same time, Jack, you get kicked to the curb by the algorithm that's going on. So
I'll try to interrupt.
Well, no, I think we'll just have to do like a conch thing where someone has to put their hand up if they want to speak over someone else.
Yeah.
Jack, please.
The podcast has to be sincere, innit? So the way it's sincere is by us just being free without talking and being ourselves. That's the easiest way we can make something interesting. So the discussions of all nature should be undertaken, and we can just look out of it because we can just edit it and it won't look like it's been edited.
Let's just not edit it. Just Joe Rogan for days, all day, all night, all day.
You've been watching Joe Rogan recently?
Not so much since it went to Spotify, but yeah, I mean, it's generally something that I try and keep up with a bit. Yeah, I mean, I took a student on recently that wanted to do some double pedal metrics, and I just said to him, like, I'm not the king of the double pedal, but I think I know what I'm talking about, and I've got a really low tolerance to BS. So if I get to the point where I don't think I know the answer to something you're asking, I'll just tell you, and we'll figure it out together.
Nice.
So, same thing with this, really.
Yeah. You're your coach.
So, but I guess despite the sincere or irreverent or whatever nature of it, I mean, there has to be some kind of like a manifesto. It's like, what is the point of the podcast, really?
Well, you've already said that you think it should be about bringing things from day to day life into how we're drumming and developing ourselves.
For
And
me, it's just hearing you two talk. That's the purpose. Is that, yeah,
that's what I wanted to do. Listen to you two talk.
Get your in a format where other people might want to listen.
It's really interesting. Obviously, people watching or listening to this, all one person. Like, hi, mom. You know, they've got no idea what our relationship is in terms of who we think's better at what. Like, oh yeah, I think Adam's doubles are better, but my feet are better, or whatever. But I think all three of us want to listen to the other two talk.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Maybe it's just like Mexican standoff, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got it. It's this way. Yeah. Well, okay. So Adam said, Adam, you've talked recently about the peak performance, like sports psychology, as applied to drumming in terms of like physical niggles, like overcoming that, and the psychology of practice. And that's something that like Benny Grebb's been talking about. I'm very much interested in like the technical like movement / pattern thing. Like, how do I convince people that doubles and flams have got the same pattern? And once they're convinced, is there a set of exercises that I can give to a beginner or intermediate player to move them from I understand the concept to I've like reified it subjectively, and now I can move between doubles and flams effortlessly, like watching sort of like Klaus Hessler, who's a big proponent of that, would do. Jack, what are you hoping to give to people or get out of it?
What out of this? We're talking about the podcast.
Yeah, just generally.
It's just sharing, in it. I've got stuff I want to share, and in turn, hopefully, that kind of improves my understanding of what it is. That's the whole thing, isn't it? This is another medium in which we can just continue to search, and find common ground within like our musical journey, for lack of a better term. So,
yeah.
Like, it is. The thing I always loved about teaching was fully understand something when you are able to teach it, and that things we'll discuss, I think, will highlight many of the things that we're also looking to get some answers on as well.
I think if I can jump in there, when I teach a concept, whether it was 20 years ago or yesterday, I always feel like I understand it better at the end. And I feel like we're just doing that process here where we just talk about an idea and it becomes more and more clear the more we articulate it and bounce back and forth.
Maybe it's like when you were talking about how when you teach, let's say you're teaching somebody young and you're trying to give them a bit of headroom in their playing, so you kind of take them beyond their capacity so that when they're, in a pressure situation, you kind of lose 10, like 10%, 15% of your actual in practice room ability. But if you're giving yourself that headroom, then it's like comfortable, yeah? And I think maybe in terms of discussing concepts to do with drumming, sometimes maybe it's helpful to look at it like maybe there's a set of simple concepts and slightly more advanced concepts, and that's enough. But maybe if you go to this much higher level with people where you really try and dig into a concept, it gives you a kind of conceptual headroom so that you understand the stuff at the bottom better. It's almost like if the concept starts like that, and as it gets more advanced, it widens out. And that widening is your perspective. So you're getting like a wider, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Almost like on a radar system, that like piece of pie scanner shape thing going out and getting kind of more perspective on the ideas that you learned at the beginning. And also, it's like the drum hyperspace thing, isn't it, that you talk about, that people don't all learn ideas in the same direction or like a linear path, do they? I mean, that's what we aim for in terms of starting with simple things. But by the intermediate point, like a skill tree on a computer game, it's like it gets kind of scattershot. And I think the more you kind of go into depth, more you go in depth with more things, I think it starts to fill in all the spaces where you've not been before, and then you get that more kind of complete picture.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I'm always trying to find the most efficient ways to utilize my time and developing a skill. I always think, like, it's interesting, Benny Greb released a book, didn't he, recently, which is kind of like Kenny Werner's Effortless Mastery, which is another book on how best to practice. And, when you're looking at that scattershot, like, image of your abilities or how you can trail off down certain paths at any given moment, through a practice routine over a few week period, you can just go off on tangents of all of that, and you can have these holes where, you've got gaps, but also it's that efficient practice, and it's doing the things that are not like a waste of time. And I always love, everything that I give to students. I always have the little footnote that it's like the reason I'm teaching you this thing is because I believe that it encompasses many important things, and there's many fundamentals at the core of everything that we're doing. And I'm trying to take you on the quickest route, so you haven't got to go around the houses, which a lot of us have done in many ways. Just take this really direct route, so you've got maximum productivity. That's always like number one on my list in sharing, is just getting that, like, what's beneficial.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's cool. And while you were saying that, I was thinking, maybe the character build in a computer game is like a good paradigm to use when you're thinking about teaching drummers, especially if they want something specific. Because you could go, well, I want to be a metal drummer. And it's like, okay, what's the metal drummer character build? What do the stats look like? It's like, well, it's rapid singles, isn't it, with hands and feet, blast beats, or like, what are the fundamentals that allow metal drummers to employ the things they do? Well, you need power, maybe some crazy time signatures, stamina, all these other things. You could have like a jazz build, a pop build, it'd be a good way to think about teaching. You just go, okay, here's the pop drummer's components. You bang them all in and go, right, this is the path we're going on.
Yeah, it's like, it's like RPG, in it, just building your character attributes.
Yeah.
Like, you're a mage. Oh, you're fucking...
Flams, 16, yeah. Singles, 28.
Yeah, singles 28, yeah. Yeah, and on the 29th one it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting actually, like from my perspective or from our perspectives. Let's say you're doing the metal drummer build, right? What do you neglect? Because we know what you're going to focus on, but what can you legitimately neglect?
I think in some way if you look at when you see the notation on a page as being representative of the sounds you're going to make, if you look at that as representative of a kind of like sonic landscape, if let's say within the metal drummer build, there are certain subdivisions and certain tempos and certain time signatures you're going to operate in. Yeah, that metal drummers are probably going to operate in. And it's like, if you want to play metal, you want to associate with other musicians who play metal, and you want a good chance of being good at it, here's the things you have to know, and here's the places that metal drumming goes to. So I'm going to teach you about, obviously like triplets, sixteenths, sextuplets, 30-second notes. I'm going to teach you like these 3 time signatures, and maybe these 1 or 2 crazy ones that pop up for some reason. And then like the 3-3-2 phrase that we were talking about the other day that has the tension in it, but still in an even grouping. Maybe you teach them like a few of those phrases that are always cropping up, and you teach them multiple ways to play them. And I don't think it's a case that you would deliberately neglect anything. I think you would just end up neglecting things because of the direction that metal music goes in, and the places that it occupies in terms of subdivisions and time signatures and tempos and things like that.
It's like it's like the sort of Petersonian, like, what are you paying attention to? Because unless you choose a hierarchy of things to pay attention to, you can't act. So, okay, I'm going to be a metal drummer. Well, okay, I need to be able to play slow, but I want to play fast. So you're probably only going to play slow as a means to getting to fast. You know, and I think if you just, I think this is one of the problems with me. I never know where to start because I think everything's important, but actually in the creative world, everything's directed by culture. You know, maybe you're into jazz, maybe you're into Afro-Cuban, maybe you're into samba. So yeah, I think the you exclude things that don't present themselves to you. So playing lots of really soft buzz rolls doesn't really present itself if you're listening to loads of dead heavy metal.
Yeah, it's also you've got to consider what your goals are going to be. Like, you know, if your goals musically are somehow tied to an emotional state that you want to experience, so it's like I want to feel like really aggressive and fast and intense, and the way I'm going to express that is by playing really fast. So your goal is to learn how to play really fast. Is to learn how to, let's say, when you said a minute ago that you don't know where to start sometimes, I think it's perhaps easier for musicians who are songwriters or more song-minded, because the objective is the song, right? And if the objective is, well, the song needs this bit and this bit and this bit, well, I'll just do those things. So I know exactly where to start because all I'm concerned about is the end result. I'm not concerned about like it being some journey. The journey for me is like my career or the writing of the song, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to what Jack was saying about when he's teaching and also when he's spending his time practicing, his goal is to either take or demonstrate the shortest path from where he is to where he wants to be. And I think often when you're a more developed drummer or musician, you can identify a little bit better where you are, and everyone can identify where they want to be because all you've got to do is like stick YouTube on and go, oh, I want to be like that guy, and you figured out where you're going. Sometimes figuring out where you are is difficult, and if you've got no experience, it can be very difficult. And I think thinking about the direct idea that Jack was talking about versus what you were saying, Adam, about the song. So, for example, the song might have the groove that goes boom, gat, boom, boom, gat, boom, gat, boom, boom, gat, boom, gat, boom, boom, gat. You know, that might be the goal, and then everything else is kind of irrelevant. Whereas when I think about my first lesson that I always give to beginner drummers, you know, we get this groove where we're playing, you know, the bass drum one, backbeat snare drum, hi hats, and we're going boom, gat, gat, boom, gat, gat, and then I have a whiteboard where I put magnets on to represent the basses and the snares, and I have black crosses for the hi hats. And I just move. You guys have seen it. I just move the bass drum, and I don't even put it somewhere and go, oh, let's try the second position or the last position. I just go, where do you want to put it? You know, and they go, oh, the fifth one. And I go, okay, well, that sounds the same as the first one, but let's see if they can figure that out for themselves. So you're not getting any closer to any conscious goal of a song, but you're satisfying what Jack was talking about going, right, here's the facility. You know, Dom always used to talk about facility. It's like, where do you want to put bass drum? Anywhere. Okay, let's put bass drums wherever we want them. But when there's only only 8 options, it doesn't take long. But when there's a billion options, obviously you have to start chopping it down. But go on.
Sorry, yeah. Well, okay, how about this as a formulation? How about saying there's a difference between wanting to do something and wanting to be able to do something. So, for example, like I was thinking, there's a difference between using music or learning a musical instrument to create something and using a musical instrument to learn a skill. Because some drummers like practice loads of stuff so they can just be ready for things if they happen. Whereas people creating things are like, I already know what I want to happen and I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to get the necessary bits, make it, and then I'll make the next song. And maybe that'll use different skills. And over the course of like 20 years, I'll end up being a skilled drummer or whatever. Like if you look at, just staying on the metal drummer thing, you look at someone like Paul Mazurkiewicz out of Cannibal Corpse. You know, he himself has said, he's like the Lars Ulrich of death metal, right? He himself has said, he's like, if I wasn't playing in Cannibal Corpse, I wouldn't play the drums. He's like, the only reason I play drums is to write Cannibal Corpse songs. I'm not interested in practicing or learning loads of skills. I just do what this music requires because that's the thing I'm here for, is to write these songs. It's not to learn how to be a drummer so I can be a skilled craftsman who can apply himself to lots of different things.
Yeah, he was, you know, the drums is his tool, isn't it? And he wants to create music. So he's could have cut, you know, the objective is the music and not the tool you use to get there, maybe. So he could have maybe easily just picked up a guitar or bass. Could have been anything. It's just like the vision is the music, isn't it? Whereas some people are like, the drums is the reason I'm doing it. Allows me. There's a spectrum, isn't there? There's like all the way from the martial art, like the real disciplined, stoic, you know, practitioner, to the band drummer. It's like, yeah, man, I'd play my songs, and if I was not in this band, I wouldn't play drums at all. And I'm, you know, part of the creative process, but it's just happy to just knock out a beat and not think at any level past that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can all say that we've seen drummers that are far less technically competent than probably us three, and yet, you know, millions of people enjoy their music. And I think we probably all agree that a judgment call about technique has got nothing to do with a judgment call about art or the value of art or the subjective value of art. You know,
it's the Chapin thing, isn't it? It's what Chapin said, that, you know, his experience, like the guys who were great musicians weren't great drummers and vice versa. And I suppose it's because, you know, they're almost two different skills in a way, even though they're late and tightly correlated with one another. You know, like writing songs is not necessarily learning an instrument, although you do need to know some instrumentation in order to make a song, don't you? So it's like, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy, hope he doesn't mind me dropping his name, a guy called Fraser McAllister, and it was a random dude from one of the drum forums in the UK, and we were just chatting about whatever, and I was like, oh, Pad Sesh Friday then, and he was like, yeah, so we just had like a 3-hour chat yesterday like this, and he said something, I think it was Buddy Rich, he was like, you know, I can't get more than 2 minutes through a Buddy Rich solo without just getting bored, and he plays other instruments, and he's like, but I can listen to Benny Greb for like 15 minutes, you know, and it's all about holding people's attention, theme and variation. You know, I read some article the other day talking about, like, I think I sent it to you guys, about how Parliament, a lot of funk is groove orientated, so there's not really sections, there's just discipline. And I think I like groove music and I like song structured music, but I definitely agreed with this guy that it's like, I'd rather watch Benny Greb, you know, be somehow musical than watch someone who's virtuoso ridiculous, but just going blah and just bombing for 20 minutes. And I guess everyone's got their thing, haven't they?
I saw Parliament live a few years ago.
Oh, wow.
It was just insane.
Good.
There's about 900 people on stage, most of them not just like bezzes. Just loads of bezzes on stage, just dancing on the speakers and stuff. And like, they went from, you know, old school kind of Atomic Dog, all that kind of Maggot Brain and all that really like nasty funk, because it was like Parliament Funkadelic. And then they dropped some like, almost like dubstep, hi-fi, like proper grimy hip hop style stuff at the end with like massive bass on it. It was just disgusting.
Where was that? What venue?
It was at the Birmingham Funk, Jazz and Soul Festival. Like Booker T and the MGs played. That was great.
Wow. Did you get beamed up to the mothership?
Mate, I wish.
Hey, listen, we should, you know, we've got, for the picture, I mean, the picture might change. I just rinsed some picture of a cartoon drum kit in space and wrote drum hyperspace on it on my phone. I feel like one of the things we should explain is what drum hyperspace is.
Okay.
We're going to keep talking about it.
Yeah, maybe we should lay out. You should lay out some concepts then.
I feel like, in the true sense of sharing and teaching and steel manning,
Sorry, can I just add to that? Can I just say maybe what we should do is, instead of laying out like necessarily our objectives, because the chat's just going to float around, maybe we should like lay out what we see as problems. You know, like we're not saying we've got the solutions. The kind of the objective is we're going through all these chats to try and figure things out, aren't we? Because like Jack was saying at the beginning, we're sort of all seekers, aren't we? So maybe in laying out this drum hyperspace idea, maybe you should lay out the motivation for thinking about it and some of the problems you see with learning and, you know, the way we approach ideas. And Jack could do the same, you know, because obviously you've got a completely different experience to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd quite like it if someone else attempted to explain drum hyperspace and then.
Mate.
Go on, Jack.
Your idea, mate.
My idea. Sorry.
You got to explain it.
Okay.
You can explain it and we'll say whether we understand it or not.
Yeah,
We'll just ask you questions.
I'll attempt to explain it. Okay. And then you two can correct me. We should probably preface this that Adam and I have already decided that 99.9% of the possible places you can go in drum hyperspace are absolute gash and not worth going to musically.
Yeah. Nobody lives there. Fucking Marco Miniman lives there.
It's a
No Man's Sky, innit? The past.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a desolate musical wasteland.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just like fucking, I don't know what kind of music is out there. It's the Delta, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
The what?
The Delta Quadrant, isn't it? It's just the Borg. It's just really bad German electro out there.
Yeah. It's like Rammstein's kids have formed a band.
It's like, you know what it is? It's just Frank Zappa's Jazz from Hell forever. Do you know what I mean? Going through it.
Have you seen that Frank Zappa documentary yet? The one that Alex Winter did. Yeah, it's great. It's just called Zappa. It came out a couple of months ago. If you can find it, I'll send it. Yeah, it's great.
Great.
Yeah, wicked. Yeah, I've forgotten about that.
Okay, drum hyperspace. What's drum hyperspace? Drum hyperspace didn't exist for a long time, but drum straight lines existed for a while in my head. So I was like, oh, okay, I've got, what have I got? I've got like paradiddles, and tell me if this audio is terrible. And I can go paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. You know, and then everyone does the next inversion, and they do the inverted paradiddle. Radiddle, paradiddle, 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 par. And then the next one, diddle, paradiddle, paradiddle, para. You know, and we tell ourselves it's the same pattern, but for me at least, they feel like completely different patterns when I'm playing them. And one of my goals was to make them feel the same, so that whichever one I was best at, or whichever phrases I could pull out using certain inversions, I could put into any rhythmic gear or note value, or have over any foot ostinato, or with any accent moving around. So I started saying, you know, like, radiddle, pa, radiddle, pa, radiddle, pa, and I tried to convince myself that the paradiddle was the same. It wasn't just like, oh, I know the pattern's the same, but like really convince myself they were the same. And I would call that like conceptually collapsing them into the same thing, right? So they're not just the same pattern on paper, like they actually feel like the same thing. So you can collapse like 4 paradiddles, or really there's 8 of them, into the same idea, and then you can move between them more fluidly in different styles. And then there's realizing, you know, something Jack introduced me to via Jim Chapin years ago. You can change the spacing, and you can collapse the paradiddles, you know, so you can realize that paradiddle and flam accent have got the same pattern. Paradiddle, 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 paradiddle. yeah, and like you can squish things or expand them, and realizing that paradiddle diddle and the 6-stroke roll have got the same stick in, and then realizing, oh, when I do this, this thing, it doesn't matter when I go boom, boom, or when I go boom, like I felt like throwing was different depending on where I threw. So I was always trying to get to this point where the same movement would happen and the same idea would trigger in my head, regardless of where the beat was. This whole concept of beat one, or the beat, the pulse, it's totally subjective, right? It's not like you can measure it using physics. So drum hyperspace is like...
Yeah, but it's only subjective within certain limits. It's like, if you heard a pop song, I might hear it on, like this, and you might feel half of that, you might feel double of that, but you're not going to feel it in groups of 3. You're not going to feel Billie Jean in like 3/4 time, are you? You're not going to feel, or in some other grouping. It's not going to move outside certain.
Go on, Jack. Oh no, I know what you're going to say.
You're not going to feel Billie Jean in 15, 16.
Yeah. Adam, were you with us in California when that happened?
I don't think so, no.
So me, Jack, the Burger, Dom, Paul, Proctor, maybe, we're in a van, and there was an incident with a bottle of Tango that we probably shouldn't talk about. Dom had told everyone, tell Jim that Michael Jackson's Billie Jean's in 15, 16. Everyone was in on it. After like 3 days, I was like, I'm not having it. I'm not. I had a tantrum. I was like, shut up. You're having me on.
You know what's funny is they knew you were the only guy that would work on because you about things so much.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I kept it. It was about a day or 2 days. I just kept it going. And when Dom saw him at night at an event, he came up to him and we told him to mention it. It went on for about a couple of days. Yeah. Just Jim wetting, just thinking about how there's that. Like, what? Can you not hear the push? Like, it's just there, man. It's there.
I was like, look, I play in a prog band. I know what 15, 16 sounds like. I've written more songs in 15 than any of you. They're having none of it. Anyway, it was a disaster. Anyway, funny. Drum hyperspace. So you can just keep collapsing ideas, right? And then to the point where, like, I remember years ago, I was in Nottingham Drum Centre, and there was like some groove, and it went boom, ga boom, boom, ga boom, boom, ga boom, boom, ga boom. I think it was in the Drum Centre. It might have been at the music school where Jack and I worked. And I went, oh yeah, it's like the bossa clave on the bass drum. And whoever it was I was talking to was like, oh yeah, so it is. And just little things like that had always been obvious to me. But I guess if you can think of all the rhythms as interchangeable or nudgeable, and all the stickings and all the different gears, all of a sudden everything gets a lot easier. And for me, I'm very interested in, like, how do we take shortcuts, to get students through things, really. Like, did anyone ever think about drag tap? Excuse me, drag tap, right? Like the Herter with doubles. Diddle para, diddle para, diddle para, diddle para, diddle para. Did anyone ever think about that as a paradiddle? I think there's a lot of things that are conceptually collapsible into, oh, that's like that maybe people miss.
Or maybe it's not just the idea of things being collapsible. Maybe collapsible is like a subset of a higher category, which is phrasing within rudiments. Because rudiments are presented to us as like in 8th notes or in 16th notes, and we fail to see, I think, at the beginning, it's like that's just how they're being presented to you. But like part of what I think your idea is getting at is that there's loads of phrases that you hear that when you break down the coordination, you go, oh, it's just that pattern again. There's the pattern, and then there's the subdivision or the phrasing of it, and they're independent of one another. Paradiddle doesn't have to be 16th notes, does it? Like you said, it can be loads of other things as well.
Yeah. If your body, because of the physical nature of it, if your body is already learned the mechanics and it's in the muscle memory, you discover a new pattern that is actually physically the body has already done the work, then it's like unlocking that thing, isn't it?
That's
It's
it.
a puzzle to the pattern that you might not see, and it's just a lot.
That's what it is. It's not that all ideas can be bent into each other.
No, but
It's
isn't it? But
pardon?
yeah, it's not all that. If they present themselves as having an obvious trait that someone might have missed that's going to develop, and it's usually that there are many patterns that repeat themselves, don't they, in different subdivisions.
Yeah.
That's an obvious way that you could kind of increase conceptually the students' understanding of drums, just as a concept. That on its own, there are many patterns that are repeated, albeit in varying subdivisions. And that whenever you see a pattern, one of the things you try and do is analyze it to see if it may have already been presented in a slightly different format.
Yeah. When you said, sorry, say that again.
The paradiddle is ubiquitous in all over everything from drag, tap. Everything's like.
Yeah. What you said about expanding students, drummers. When we talk about students, I think we can all agree we're talking about everyone. We're not talking about little kids that we teach. We're talking about ourselves as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about expanding people's concepts, which is what you said. It's about plugging them into, you've already got this thing in this way, why can't you do it this way? And then you're expanding their musicality, not their concept. It's like they've got the concept, they've got the physical thing already. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it might feel like a conceptual leap, but it's like recycling things. So another great example, I think, I sometimes do a lesson with people, and I often write at the top, movement versus time. And we play these two grooves. So tell if this sounds awful. So we'll play like, and we'll play. Yeah, that come through all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to play all the accents at the end of the group of three, right? If I'm playing like a strong, funky thing this way, yeah, that's cool. And if I want to play like like a soca thing, so I want to put the accent at the end. But then when I'm doing like a jazz thing, I'm more going like push, control, pull. And I don't push into the last note. So then I get, which looks totally different to, and to me, like, they're totally different movements, right? And they're musically different tools. But then playing the throw on the offbeat always fried me because you have to pick up on the beat. So changing from this, hopefully you'll see the change. So it's like da 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 da. I think that's a lot easier mechanically than da 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 da. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
It's like in double bass grooves. If you got like really rapid like 16ths going digga 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 digga, if you go digga 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 digga, like the snares there like that on the 1, 2, 3, 4 feels one way.
Yeah.
But if you hear on the ands, right, and you go like it suddenly becomes harder to do your legs, and it's like I'm going at exactly the same speed. Just my hands are doing something different, and now the legs feel hard for some reason.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the same with accents in paradiddles, isn't it? Where if you try and play, say, the 4 inversions without any accents, some will be easier than others, and you'll have difficulty just playing them consistently. But if you always accent the pa in every paradiddle, no matter what inversion you're playing, then your body just can easily do the same motion, although the accent will no longer be with the click. You know, that it's that accent just enables you to be able to play all inversions easy because your body's.
I agree with what you're saying, but I saw you do that, 12 years ago or whatever with some tool stuff, and I disagreed because personally I didn't find it as easy. I could see it happening when you did it, and I could see it sort of happening with me, but mentally I was like, I'm so stuck in my head. I'm like, I can't feel that that's the same movement. I'm having to think something different. So getting it to the point where it's the same idea and the same subjective feeling for me was always a big challenge.
Yeah.
And sorry, I really shouldn't have got high before I did this. I've had about 50 been talking. So just to go back, like to try and tie some of this together, I had loads of thoughts while you two were talking about it. And okay, so when you look at Trinity graded stuff, and lots of other things as well, they always present like pattern ideas, like rudimental patterns, conceptually in a subdivision, right? They don't extricate it from the subdivision. Go right. There's this pattern, and then there's this infinite number of rhythmic things you can do. Well, not infinite, but within certain boundaries, there's a lot of rhythmic things you can do with it. What we do is we go, here's the table of time. If you wanted to get like pretty broad with somebody, right? Put the rudiment through the table of time. And then you were talking before about why we have such difficulty leaping from one idea to another when the idea is the same. And you were talking to me about a student that you taught, and you were giving them the table of time so that they could do things like 5s and 7s. And you said that like they spent a week on it and just didn't have a problem with it. And you said that you think that part of the reason was that you'd not hammered it into them that it was something that was hard. You just went, oh, do this. But like we get self-educated as drummers, and like it goes around like a meme, like playing certain things is difficult. So then you kind of program yourself to think that they're hard, when in fact they're not. They're just, other versions of the same thing, and you're just as capable of doing a 5 as you are of doing a 4.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe one thing that you could do is like tying in with my transitions idea is like, let's say you start with a pattern, and then let's say if you knew enough about different styles of music and you knew loads of different ways of musically phrasing, let's just say the paradiddle pattern or whatever, right? But like in this kind of music, the paradiddle might be used like this, but where in Latin it might be used like this, or like it crops up in metal like this, or maybe as like a bass drum and snare pattern like this. And I found one of the problems I have is I teach it to them in this limited way at the beginning. And then when it gets to the point where we do encounter that thing where it's like, oh, this is just a paradiddle, I have this conversation with her sometimes where I'm like, oh, and you'll notice that this is the same pattern as the paradiddle. But by that point, they're like, it just doesn't mean anything to them because I hadn't taken the time at the beginning to sit them down and go, right, here's a group of rights and lefts. Here's this like system of time. Okay, here's this idea of music in which we, it's built on this grid of time, but it has lots of different inversions and different, phrasings, and showing them how to do all that. And it's almost like you take the pattern and you detach the concept of time from it and you make them separate from each other. I remember this story Christopher Walken was telling about acting, and he said that whenever he would improvise, not improvise, whenever he would learn some dialogue, he said he'd get the script, and the first thing he'd do is he'd just rewrite it without any punctuation in it. He's like, I'm going to where the commas and the full stops are, right? I've just got the words, and now the phrasing bit comes after.
The words.
Exactly, the developer, yeah. So it's like, you don't get to tell me how to phrase it. You just give me the words to say. Don't like pollute my mind with the full stops and all that kind of stuff. And then I was thinking, when you were talking about, there's this interaction, there's this physical thing that gets in the way, right? Because like there's our sense of the pulse, and then our sense of, it's almost like it's so deeply programmed into us when we get to a certain point as drummers, it becomes hard to undo. So that like, you know, when you were talking about that group of three, that when you play it in these different places, suddenly your hand just starts doing this different thing at certain times. Well, it's just the same thing. And I was thinking, if you look at proprioception, you know, this idea that all your limbs in space are giving feedback information to your central nervous system or to your brain so that you know where they're all at and what they're all doing, or you have a sense of what they're doing. Maybe one of the things that happens, like with the double bass example I gave before, maybe what happens is if one group of muscles starts operating at this point and then another group of muscles starts operating at another point, it creates like some interruption in whatever was happening before. So let's say you've got constant 16ths on the double bass and you change the phrasing of the snare, and then, you know, there's because these muscles up here are moving differently, maybe like down the chain, your core muscles are moving a bit more differently. And then that causes like some feedback into the legs where the legs are like, oh, now everything doesn't quite feel the same. Maybe what you've got to do is, like you were saying before, you've got to take people through every way of phrasing it, you know, to drill that into them that like it is just the same. Maybe there's got to be some degree of like, you know, when you do 16ths on a hi-hat like this, you go, right? And you're doing the like the E ghost notes, where if you do like molar pumping on the hi-hat, as you're going down, as you're going up with the right hand, the left hand's going down. You know what I'm saying? When you get that like down up thing at the same time. And the first time you learn it, you're like your left hand's like coming up and stuff, you know, and then eventually you get it, don't you? Where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm just dropping it all the time. That's all that's happening. But I think it just takes time to learn that stuff. But I think the takeaway is, one point is that there's this huge interaction between, there's the pattern, there's the phrasing, there's the way the phrasing is affected by the interaction of all your limbs. And then there's like maybe a set of exercises that are broader than we've even thought about, which is taking this pattern and putting it through loads of, showing them all the phrasing possibilities outside of the table of time, like the musical phrasing possibilities. Because these are just like, there's like facility phrasing exercises. Like, here's the table of time. Now I can play it in lots of different subdivisions. But it doesn't necessarily teach you the thing you were talking about, you know, how to like break it up and put space into it and make it musical and into different rudiments. Sorry, I rambled for a moment.
Yes, mate.
Jack, did you want to comment on that? Because I've got about 3 things to say. Couple of things then. One, when you're going with the bass drum, when you go I'm like, yeah, it's the same written down, right? But like, you know, is your hand going, you know, were you playing like, so the downs all happening together?
Yeah.
And then when you play on the backbeat,
yeah,
when you go like 3 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now you've changed the hand pattern because the backbeat's happening with up, right? Well,
no, I'm not talking about the hand pattern. I'm talking about the legs, what the legs are doing.
But the legs are doing the same thing, right? They're going . And what I'm talking about, it's all related, but it's like, sometimes I'll play the hi-hat and snare like this. 3, 4, down, 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 down. And when I go to the backbeat, 3 and 4 and down, down, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I'll shift the down on the cymbal, but other times I'll leave it on the beat, like 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And they're completely different patterns. And I think sometimes this is where we run into these problems. It's like, have we changed the interrelation of the hands, but because it looks the same on paper, we think we're doing the same thing, whereas actually mechanically we're doing a totally different thing. And I think with that, it'd be nice if anyone is actually listening. Again, hi mom. Maybe I could be like, what's his name, Constantine's mate, and just keep talking about my Venezuelan mom.
What's he called? Francis Foster.
Francis Foster. Call me Frank. Yeah, my mum's not Venezuelan. Yeah, shout out for anyone who wants to go through this. In Klaus Hessler's open-handed playing book, he's got this exact thing where it's like, we were talking about like exercises, and it's like, what is the minimum number of exercises to to drill this in. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 beats, 2 off beats, 3, 4, 1, 3, and then like a sort of da da da, and then off beat, you know, doing that both ways round. There's some minimum amount of information you need to give people or give yourself to drill that in so that your right hand doesn't want to follow what your left hand's doing. So that was one thing. Like, yeah, you're playing the same pattern, but are you playing the same movements? Yeah. And then going back to this thing, I just wanted to be absolutely clear. Like, there's 2 rhythms. Here's the first one. And the other one. There's also 2 techniques. And, you know, and for me, spending a lot of time trying to get both techniques working, and I'm sure there's more techniques, getting everything cooking nicely, so that I don't get distracted. Like Jack said to me ages ago when the 3 of us were in my studio, you know, you're doing some jazz thing, and as soon as you change the snare drum, like your right hand goes. Yeah, and it like just goes out the window, and the whole arm moves differently. And I think for me, a lot of this like movement versus time, thinking versus time, pattern versus time, accent versus time. There's a lot of studies, but what I'm interested in doing is like, what's the minimum amount of information you could give someone to crack this idea open? You know what I'm saying?
Crack what idea open? What do you mean?
Crack, for example, I'm going yeah, and I'm leading my right foot, right? Why is it when I lead my left foot, it don't work? Left, right, 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 boom, 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 gap, boom, 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 gap. Like my feet are doing the same thing, and my hands are doing the same thing, but the coordination has been flipped round. So then I get rid of the hands and I work on the feet, and I'm like, oh, I can't even do the feet on their own, but the pattern is right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, whichever way you start it. You know, so it's this subjective thing of like my mind versus another bit of my mind that says, here's the beat. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, go on.
Yeah. So, again, identifying the fundamental problems consistent, and then and having the solutions, isn't it? Like, so as you say, give them the least amount of information necessary, or the concise information without any flaw. I presented to them at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're getting back into mine and Adam's conversation about, is our job as music teachers day to day, is it to create artists, or is it to facilitate people with whatever level of artistry they have inside them? Because for some people, if I say, oh, we're going to put a bass drum on all 16 different positions, then that might be so much technical exercise that they get bored and it switches them off, because we're not song directed and art directed. But then for other people, that might be the exact catalyst that they need to go off and start a band like Zappa.
My cousin, right, he's got a mate who plays guitar.
Yeah.
And he's like fucking 17, 18 or something. They were hanging out, and he's like, they proper like grindcore kind of metal guy, right?
Yeah.
So he came around my cousin Dave's house, and Dave's got a really broad taste in music. So he's listening to loads of Frank Zappa, and he was listening to, I can't remember the album. I think it was like Waka Jawaka or something. And he came around, one of the like proper guitar heavy ones, and he came around my cousin's mate, and he was like, "What's this?" He's like, "Oh, this is Frank Zappa." And he's like, "No way, this is amazing." So he sat and listened to the whole album. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to get this album. This is brilliant." Comes back a week later, and he'd learned the whole album on guitar, and he just sat and played it for my cousin.
Wow.
No.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I was like, I don't know if you can teach that.
Autism a go-go. Yeah.
God.
Shout out. Go on, Jack. Sorry.
Yeah, that's just that person that trumps everything. That trumps everything that we're talking about. Just obsession to play it. You know what I mean? If you're someone that just can't not play their instrument for at least several hours a day, then you don't have to do much. There's not much seeking that people have to do for the benefit of the student, because that just trumps everything else. Time will get you there. But if you're limited certain ways, then it becomes, when time's a factor.
Yeah, can you teach enthusiasm to people?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. That's amazing. One week.
That's serious going. Yeah, and everyone's got a different. It's not even aptitude, is it? It is enthusiasm. Like, I can sit and play my pad for 3 hours, no problems. You know, last couple of weeks I've been playing 1 to 3 hours pretty much every day. Just working on a few simple ideas with my hands and feet. But some people can't sit on a pad for 5 minutes, you know. But then, you know, Jack, I think, well, both of you guys, I think you guys can sit there and just play songs for hours and hours and hours. And I like playing songs, but I'm more interested in sorting out my left hand and that sort of thing. But I guess when it's not a COVID pandemic or whatever you want to call it, then I'm playing a lot more music. So my musical output is a lot higher when I'm generating music with other people. Like, I'm massively into being around people. So when I'm in a band situation, I can do a 5-hour rehearsal, no problems. And when I'm in that situation, I'll generate a lot of musical ideas and hopefully some quality stuff. But if you leave me on my own, I tend to just practice the more technical elements that I find interesting myself.
Yeah.
So, Adam, you mentioned something earlier about that rhythm Tresillo, this one. Without the tag. Shall we maybe share my/our theory on why that's such a common rhythm?
Well, I think we shared the idea that it was a common rhythm, but I think you nailed the idea though.
Well, I think I'm trying not to take too much credit for it, because I couldn't have got there without both of us talking about it.
So your idea, as I understand it, was that there's this rhythm of like 3 3s and a 2 that crops up all the time in music. This like what?
2 2s, 2 3s and a 2.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Yeah, 2 3s and 2. So the and it just like it crops up in rock music, it crops up in Latin music, it crops up in hip hop. It just crops up in fills, it crops up in bridges, it crops up in little flourishes and stuff in music. It just seems to be everywhere. I've heard like death metal songs that have got it.
Can I just interrupt you there? I've heard it in bits of India, North Africa. Jack, is it in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's everywhere, right?
So, and you said that one of the reasons it's so popular is because it goes 3 3 2, and that's like a weird grouping. It sort of has some tension to it, but unlike something that's in like a 5 or a 7, like get it, that kind of thing, because it's, you know, it resolves over in like an even subdivision or, you know, over 8 notes or 8 spaces or whatever. It's still even, which means you can still dance to it in this, you know, the way your body's symmetrical, but it has this weird tension in the middle of it, and like that's maybe why people are attracted to it, because it's like the most basic thing that's even that has tension in it. I think that's what it said.
Yeah, that's it. It's the simplest or most basic rhythm that you can play that has tension between 3s and 2s, and yet adds up to an even number. So 2 2 doesn't have tension, 3 3 doesn't have tension, 2 3 adds up to 5 but has tension, and 3 2 the same thing. 2 2 3 has tension but adds up to 7, and then, you know, 2 3s and a 2, boom, you can move your body evenly. It suits our neural capacity for dividing things evenly. It suits your body that's balanced and symmetrical. Yeah, maybe if our bodies had 3-way symmetry, we would like rhythms that had, for example, Blue Rondo a la Turk, right? Goes. Yeah, it's like, and it's all 9s, so the tension is 3 2s and a 3. Maybe if you were like a 3-way symmetrical monster with tripod legs, maybe 9 would be the fundamental grouping of everything.
Maybe what it is because it resolves over 8. You can feel the pulse of it. You can feel a straight pulse, so you could go right, left with your feet as you're moving, or you could jump up and down. But then you can sense this like unevenness in the middle of it. It's like that's counteracting to what your body's doing. That's like a pleasurable thing to feel. I don't know.
Yeah, well, why have we got syncopation if there's nothing interesting? Sorry, if there's nothing appealing about it. Jack, did you want to add anything to that? Because I don't think we'd unleashed that idea on you yet.
No. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Answers on a postcard if you want to disagree with us. There was another thing that just popped into my head that you said earlier, Adam. What was it? And I wanted to comment on it. Jumping up and down, moving the body. Oh, it's gone. I hope it comes back, but it was a good idea.
Well, you can play a pulse to it with your body. The pulse is there, but there's this sense of the tension within the pulse that you can feel.
No, it's gone. It flashed into my head. It was something earlier that I wanted to comment on. It was definitely something to do with like the way that we kind of feel and experience music and syncopation, maybe.
Are you playing in a band at the moment, Adam?
No, after I left the last one, and I found out, like I was working with Johnny, but I think he's got a new drummer now. And so I've just been practicing, just working on developing me, really. It feels pretty good. I've been learning how to use Logic. I got my Hammer 88. I got an Oxygen 49 for home. I've been learning about Logic, playing piano, like learning some songs and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of in a funny place with it at the minute. It's weird. I had like a weird sort of psychological revelation the other day about drumming, and it was like a student of mine called Jake, who's like 16 now, and he's really good, like brilliant, and he's getting ready for this audition to go to this music academy, and he made some videos for it, and his dad sent me the videos. He was like, check them out and tell me what you think. So I watched them, and they were just amazing. Like normally when I see him in lessons, the camera's dead close to him because of where he puts it, but his dad had put it dead far away, so I could see his arms and legs moving and everything. But he played Whole Lot of Love with his brother, put a solo in the middle that he'd written. Really loves John Bonham, so he knows all John Bonham's licks, all the like fast, rapid right foot stuff and the triplet kind of stuff, and all the blurps and everything. And then he played this Latin piece, this graded Latin piece, and he's just cool as a cucumber, no stress, just laying out. This 16-year-old just nailing this like Latin jazz track, and then playing Whole Lot of Love. Techniques spot on, everything looks gorgeous. I was watching him, I felt dead emotional because I was like, wow. You know, I remembered meeting him when he's like 8, and we've been with each other like that whole time, all through everything, you know. And I kind of had this revelation that I was like, oh yeah, you're going to be the drummer that I couldn't be, because I started when I was, you know, I got my first drum kit when I was 16. I didn't really start drumming until I was 21. And it's like he's just reached the age I was at when I started, and he's already like 1,000 times better than me. But the difference between me and him is that like I didn't have any guidance from anyone with anything, you know, like life-wise or drumming-wise. I taught myself, and I thought it was kind of a nice reversal that although I hadn't had any guidance over the years, I turned into somebody else's guide, and I felt like this weird moment of transference. Like I was looking at him, and I was going, "Yeah, I'm nearly 40. It's like it's that kind of chasing the success thing. It's sort of over now, and I just have to accept that." But when I looked at him, and I saw that like he was going to go off and do his thing, I was like, you know what? If I just help one person a little bit better, then that's a beautiful thing. Do you know what I mean? And like when I started playing drums when I was younger, is when I stopped writing, and my writing just kind of like drumming came to the fore, and then writing just went underground. And I just realized that like started writing more recently, and I realized the reason I'd started writing again recently was because over the last couple of years I've actually been learning about self-acceptance, because it was something I was struggling with, and like maybe at the start being a writer is who I always really was, or the thing that I was really in tune with, and I suppressed that because of like problems I had when I was younger, and I thought I have got an affinity for drums and I think I am good at it. But I think the reason I did it was because I was looking for approval, and I wanted to and I thought getting on a stage and getting people to applaud for me and love my music, like that would get me the approval I wanted, and that would make me whole, So, and because obviously if you're writing, you've not got an audience, have you? It's not like 20,000 seat stadium. You run on stage, do you know what I mean? And there's like a typewriter in the middle on a desk like that. Everyone's get on the typewriter, everybody gets real quiet. You're like, ding, you're all going crazy. It's like it just doesn't work like that. And obviously, if you write something and somebody reads it, you don't get to watch them reading it. Like, what's their reaction? You don't get to see it. It's just a very internal thing, and like, a very private thing, I suppose, in a way. And yeah, so what was my point? Just that, yeah, I kind of had this weird revelation that like, drumming was what I did to get approval while I was learning about self-acceptance. And as soon as I did, like the writing started coming back. But I thought, even though it may have been not what I was truly like, what's in here, I still learned a cool skill out of it. Now I can like go and play fucking drums and get paid for it. Like that's amazing. So although I went a different path than perhaps the ideal one was, or the optimal one was, I actually got something out of it. So yeah, and like it was almost like there was a bit of me that was like, let's say like a really bad version of my personality, like badly programmed, from early on, and that had been the person who'd been driving the bus, but like there was a little bit of him who was like nurturing this other person, this like better person, hopefully this like person who could accept themselves, and then eventually that person grew strong enough. It was like, okay, I'm going to drive the bus now, and as soon as he started driving it, like I say, that's when I started writing again. I can't remember what your question was. I just rambled about loads of stuff.
Dude, that was like when I was tripping. That was basically what I can kind of see. You have the idea that when every decision, right, like that you make, there's a kind of infinite potentials of what could have been. Like, let's say if you did that thing that meant that you wrote. So this out there on this dimensional timeline is this Adam Sharrocks that's the writer, or the Adam Sharrocks that's the fucking whatever, based on these decisions that you make throughout your life. And when I was tripping, it was like in that moment when me and Robert were tripping, when I looked at the world, I could see all of those possibilities. So there was just me and Robert. There was all these infinite ways we were just acting out our day. There was the possibility of like doing this thing or just doing it. And I could just see them all.
Was it like playing chess? You could see like 10 moves ahead.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I relived the same moment like 20 times. We put on this Brian Jonestown Master album.
Great. When you're tripping.
It's like it's the album for tripping. Someone asked monitor engineer a few years ago on the bus was like, alright lads, you want some pills, get on this record when you're tripping, it's great. And it's just like the quintessential record. It's fucking incredible. And just when the album just came to the end, and me and Robert would just burst out like laughing for like hysterical laughter. I just repeated that moment like 20 times. Just felt like I was just reliving it.
Mm. Nuts, man.
Yeah.
That sounds impressive. I mean, again, whoever's listening to this maybe has no idea who we are. Jack's clearly done some chemical experimentation. I'm like a... Go on. Sorry.
And you can just edit this bit out.
I'd like to leave it in. Is it okay to leave it in?
Of course. Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Like...
Go on. Sorry,
No, go on.
I was going to say, it was like I'd listened to some multiverse-related podcasts recently and done a bit of reading, and I think the subconscious that has just been contemplating this idea of the multiverse a lot recently, my thoughts. It's just like doing that trip, that was like, right, that's the topic of conversation today. We're going fucking multiverse tripping.
Do you reckon it was like, when you have a dream, right? And it's like in the dream state or when you're asleep, your brain's rearranging all the information that's come in. Do you reckon it's like you were doing that? You were compiling like all the useful bits and doing the exploring and going, yeah, that goes somewhere useful, that doesn't. Almost like you're having that experience, but consciously.
Yeah, they were. Well, what happened when I went? When I was in my head, everything that I was seeing, they were like, "Yeah, we're here all the time, mate. You've just taken the medicine to open up your eyes to us. We're and everyone was like, they were just working as normal, and it was all like geometric industrial fucking production line, and it was this, and I just go to room and be all these colours, and they'd just be infinite amount of beings, and they'll be there like working, like yeah. And then I'd like close this was like in my mind, and I closed that door. The next it'd be there's like 5 doors, and I could just go into these worlds and then go out, and they were all there just constantly going. And then I'd come out of my head, and then I'd just be going on this fucking multiverse trip in the room where it was just like I could, it's like when Google Maps is 2D, right? And you just take it to 3D, and it just goes. My whole perspective of reality just tilted, and I could just see the inner workings of how of this dimension. It was fucking mad.
Yeah.
Right.
So clearly you've done that. I'm like a diehard teetotaler, and well, I won't say anything about Adam unless he wants to say something.
I've been making a lot of beats as well in this. All I've done up to now is playing this week because I'm in quarantine in Aylesbury with Robert before doing a gig and some rehearsals.
Making what? Sorry.
I'm I'm in quarantine, right? So I've got 10 days of quarantine, and then I've got 4 days of work. But me and Robert have just been making beats, I've been using GarageBand, he uses Logic, but just making loads of little loops, beats,
Cool.
little songs. Been fun to MIDI control melodies.
That's great, man.
So again, about MIDI controllers.
Just using MIDI controllers and just trying to make some melodies and tune.
Yeah, it's great, man. Once I think someone showed me like the basics of chords once, and I read a little. I've got grade 3 music theory. Just had that little bit of information, and like having played so much music, you just get a MIDI controller or whatever. You're like, oh yeah, I can hear that note doesn't go with that one. And once you've got that, because you've already got all the rhythmic phrasing from drumming, you've got like 50% of the battle already, haven't you? Because music is like, pitch and rhythm, right? If you've got all the rhythmic information, then assembling and knowing about structure, assembling like pitches, if you know which ones sound good together, makes it a lot easier. Good.
Yeah, I mean, definitely +1 for having a keyboard and making yourself learn some basic harmonic and melodic rules or structure. You know, whether you study it formally or informally. You know, again, this is supposed to be vaguely educational for people. If anyone's listening to this who's a reasonable drummer or they're young, I'm sure all of us would say, okay, wherever you are in your drum journey, if you're at 0 on the keyboard journey, let's get the keyboard up to like 3 out of 100.
Yeah. Yeah, some awareness of it, yeah.
Because
Lads, I think my dinner's ready.
oh, okay.
I'm
Well,
gonna have.
I guess that might be the end of it then.
Yeah. Sorry if we bored you, man.
No, not the back catalogue.
Okay, well, listen. Can we just do like a little tag after the edit? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So we'll do another one, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Of course.
If people found it,
Call again soon. We can discuss the podcast and then just catch up.
yeah. Okay. Well, do you mean to? Well, okay. So if people want to hear, pardon.
In the next couple of days, just chat
Yeah.
again.
If people want to comment, I was thinking they could go to YouTube and comment.
Yeah.
They just look for Singularity Strokes Podcast and my name. It will be on my YouTube to begin with. It's going to be on SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcast. But I think conversation on on YouTube is probably going to be most public. So, yeah, hopefully we'll do another one.
We'll have to do an intro and explain who we are, Jim. You know, like
an atrium intro.
Like a what?
Like an atrium intro.
yeah.
I quite like it just being dead abstract and people can figure out if they think we're full of crap or not themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have, at the beginning where it gives you a little clip of some things that they say in the podcast.
Yeah.
Like Lewis Howes interviewed Sam Harris. Boom. The thing you've got to understand about consciousness is it's like the most random comments that don't make any sense at all. Like you and your Charlie Sheen. Yeah. About Charlie Sheen. Or just a moment of silence where none of us are talking.
Right. Let us know what you think, public. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Peace and love.
All right. Speak to you soon. Much love, fellas. In a bit.